Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Let's see who's here. The link went out a little bit late on, like, literally just now because I wrote it and then I went back to check to see who opened it and nobody because it didn't actually send.
Oh,
So there's that. Uh-oh. Since I
I've
lost
done that before when I'm answering emails. I think that I answered somebody and it really goes into draft.
Oh, why am I not here? Can you? Oh, there we go.
Where'd your camera go? There. Oh,
There I am.
there you are.
Here I am. Yes. So I also sometimes answer emails in my head.
In your head?
Yeah. If I read them on my phone or whatever, and I don't like typing on my phone, I'm not good with the thumb typing.
Oh.
And so I'll be like, I'm going to answer that as soon as I'm on my computer. And then I have the answer. Like I think about it in my head and then I feel like I answered it, I guess.
Oh. Interesting.
Yeah, that happens. There's
I
4
don't know
people
that
here.
I've.
Say hi in the chat so we know who you are and that you're here. We'll just chit chat for a few minutes until people get here. So we're going to talk a little bit more about writer archetypes today. And I think we're going to talk about how the strengths and weaknesses and then what writers can do to, make sure you give StreamYard permission to put your name in there so we know it. Otherwise, it just says Facebook user and we don't know who you are. Hi, Susan. So we're going to talk about a prescription, which is like a little bit about what each archetype is, and then your kryptonite, your anecdote, and what your writer's sweet spot is or your strength. I had a really interesting conversation with my dad yesterday about the difference between teacher and artist archetypes. Because he let's just say the apple didn't fall very far from the tree. I'm very much like my dad, and we are both pretty straight up teacher writers. And his wife Nancy is an artist, just for real. Wouldn't you agree? You know Nancy, she's just an artist. She is. And so I was telling him, like, you have to think about like accept differences in people. You know, you can't expect everybody to be just like you. And my dad and I both are the kind of people that if we have an idea or someone offers us or tells us an idea that we think sounds interesting, we're like, yeah, let's do it. Yes. And then
like right now, let's do it right now in the next 24 hours. Let's do it.
To actually do it. And we don't even remember that it had come up because so many ideas have passed between like yesterday when I said, yeah, I'm totally going to do that. And today when it's time to do it, that I'm like, wait, what did I say I would do?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Because that was like a whole lifetime ago idea in idea world. And an artist is just much more methodical. They temper their energy better than the teacher does, and they're less likely to make a decision that if they don't know that they're going to have the bandwidth or the energy to follow through with it. And I don't. It doesn't even occur to me to wonder, like, am I going to have the energy tomorrow to do this thing I'm agreeing to today? I mean, it literally doesn't cross my mind until it's time to do it. And I'm like, oh man, I've been like going full on for 12 hours. Do I really have to do this? And, and neither one is better or worse. It's just difference. And, it's a lot of this is just understanding what your strengths are and your weaknesses are so that you can come up with systems, right? So people like myself and my dad and probably Meg, who's also a teacher writer, we need to come up with ways to get past all those great, exciting starts to where we're actually doing the work and showing up and finishing.
Right.
The very beginning is easy for us. We can visualize the end really easy, and it's the middle part that's really tough for teachers. The whole like actually doing the thing part that's really hard for us. And if you're so we need systems to get us past the beginning into the middle, and then through the middle into the end, right, to where we actually finish. Oh, Amy's here. Amy is definitely
a stiller. Sherry's Amy, here too, and Susan
is Adrian's aunt. Amy is for sure a spiller. I would agree. And also, though, Amy is, when I think about a skipper, Amy also comes to mind for me. I would call Amy a skipper spiller or spiller skipper, similar to Meg, except teacher, and Meg's a teacher spiller, and I would call Amy a skipper.
No, I'm a teacher skipper.
A teacher skipper.
I am definitely not a spiller.
Is a spiller skipper, or the other way around. But should we go over the 5 archetypes really quick?
I think it makes sense.
Facebook users, make sure you let StreamYard say it's okay to use your name so we know who you are if you want us to know who you are, because all we see is Facebook user. And even if you tell us your name, it still just calls everybody Facebook user. So unless you use your name every single time you speak, we won't know who you are. MJ
says she's definitely a spiller and struggle to find the message.
Yeah, the story. Yep. That's
so yeah, let's go over the 5 types real quick for just anybody that maybe wasn't here last week, and then we can talk about the prescription. Shaunta has a prescription for you guys.
The document I have that I'm going to be working off of for the prescriptions, I'm just going to go in the order of that for talking about it. So Hesitator is first, and
Sherry said she took the quiz last week and she's a spiller. Sherry Connor.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. A hesitator is someone who has their foot on the brake and the gas at the same time. You are never only a hesitator, although there are personality traits that go along with being a hesitator that you will always have. When you take your foot off the brake, you will find your true lane. Like you're gonna be like a hesitator, something else, like a hesitator, teacher, artist, skipper, or spiller. But hesitators, the personality trait that comes to mind the most for hesitators is that they are learners. And they have the patience to spend a lot of time learning how to do something or learning about something, and where they struggle is translating that into actually doing work. A skipper, this is what I was talking saying about Amy, and also Meg's got a lot of this, but a skipper is someone who does best when they have a contract or an assignment. They do best working for a magazine or a newspaper or a publisher, or like where they have I don't know how to, like where they are, and the big identifying personality trait. Nick, could you turn that light on for me? It's so dark here. It's rainy and like dark. I'm on. Oh, and there's tornado.
Oh boy, tornado, huh? So if we lose you guys,
I'm not going to think about tornadoes right now because I will freak out.
You'll be fine.
Yes.
Trust me.
No, I'm on a Facebook Live though. Sorry. That's okay. Okay. That was my son, Nicholas. Skippers are people who, if you're a skipper, your strongest, like the thing you're really good at is that you can switch gears really easy. You can write about one topic this moment, or like you can write 3 or 4 different articles on 3 or 4 different topics pretty easily, and you can switch gears. When you're done with one thing, you can immediately start working on the next thing.
I wrote about maple syrup and termites and car insurance and
when you were a freelance writer. Skippers are often freelance writers, and while any writer can be a freelance writer, I mean it's something that you're capable of if you can write. They really thrive there, and I would say the fact that Meg is really good at doing that but doesn't enjoy it super a lot is because she's not a skipper first, she's a teacher first. If you're a spiller, you're a storyteller first. And a spiller is what we call a confessional writer, or somebody whose writing is very personal, very cathartic, often very healing. When they think about what should I write about, it's always very inward. They are someone of all the different archetypes. They're the one where they would be most likely to write exactly what they're writing anyway, even if they're just writing it in their diary. As a counterpoint to that, next up is teachers. And a teacher is one of the least likely, right? I can't even think of anything that I write that I would want to write in a diary just for myself. So spillers are very inward focused. Their audience is important to them, but they're a little bit more at an arm's length, and they can be a little bit voyeuristic. Hi, Rosemary. Rosemary is cleaning her studio. We're talking about writer archetypes. Rosemary, I don't think Rosemary writes very much. She's an artist, though. And I would say if she does write, she's definitely an artist. If you're interested, Rosemary. So
Rosemary, when you're done with yours, come and clean mine.
If you're Rosemary, if anybody is really interested, Rosemary does a live stream on YouTube every Wednesday night, and it's one of my favorite. Like, I look forward to it all week long. If you're a teacher, you're an educator first. You thrive on ideas and on sharing them. So teachers are where spillers are cathartic and healing focused. Teachers are very idea focused, and they just want to share the idea. And even everybody else's ideas are very exciting to them. And since Rosemary's here, I'll tell you, like, I've told her, oh, you should do this. And then she's like, oh my God, like, how can I get very excited about everybody's ideas, and my brain has a hard time differentiating between somebody else's and mine. That doesn't mean I plagiarize other people's ideas. It means that my brain doesn't get more excited for my own ideas than it does for anybody else's. It's just, if someone has an idea and my brain can latch onto it as a good idea, it gives as much energy to Meg's good ideas as it does to my own, or Rosemary's good ideas as it does to me.
And it can be overwhelming for people. That's one of the things that
bombarded.
The feedback I got in job evaluations was that I never do anything small. Like, I
bet you, Meg, does it sound like you? Because it does to me, that whenever I'm in a group situation, I end up doing all of it.
Yeah. Well, not all. Yeah. I don't do it all because I don't like to do the detail stuff, but I end up making it much bigger than they intended it to be, because I can see like the whole picture. Yes, and I go, well, if you're going to do this, then you might as well do this too. And if we're going to do that, then we should do this. And so it ends up being much.
Someone would just pay us to come up with ideas for them. And then like, that's all we have to do.
Right.
If that was a job, we would be really good at it. Okay. And then an artist is someone who's all about the craft. So teachers write for their audience. Spillers write for themselves, skippers write for their employers, and artists write for their muse. They thrive on perfecting their work. They get a lot of enjoyment out of making each sentence perfect. And they tend to have like one idea at a time. But when they get that idea, they can live with it for decades, right? Like that one idea, they can just like get into and really keep doing, for a long time. And until it's done. And often once it's done, and then it opens up their brain, and then they can take in their next idea. Which is one reason why I don't know why I keep, my guess is Rosemary. Rosemary's definitely a teacher. If you go watch her live streams, you'll see what I'm talking about, because she does a really good job of teaching you how to she makes junk journals junk journals. And she teaches you exactly how to do it. And she does it in such a way that there's no way she's not a teacher, but she's also an artist. She's a teacher artist. She reminds me a lot of Janita or Adrienne. And, I just lost my train of thought.
I think the big thing that's different between the teachers and the artists is that artists can follow an idea like all the way through to the end before they take on another one. Whereas teachers, like, my big thing is once it's set up and we've figured out how it's going to work, then I'm bored and I'm ready to go on to the next thing.
I have a really hard time working for someone else, like having a job, because I really love learning how to do something new. And the moment absolutely the moment that I realize I'm competent at this job, I resent it and I don't want anything to do with it again. And then I start thinking I'm going to have to do this until they give me a gold watch when I'm 65. And oh my God, like I get panicky, like I can't do this forever. And writing is the only thing that has ever not given me that panicky feeling. And I think it's because it lets me use all my ideas, because
right.
But being a classroom teacher, or I was a drug court, I've had all kinds of really cool jobs.
Yeah,
and,
me too.
The second I know what I'm doing, like that I'm done with the learning part, oh my God,
then I'm bored.
Yeah, but I also get this panic, like, holy crap, I'm gonna have to do this forever.
Yeah, see, I don't panic, but I get really bored. Once I've worked for an orthopedic surgeon practice. I mean, just all kinds of different stuff where
it's really difficult for me. And I'm often very glad that it's not really difficult for everybody, because not everybody, like, it's a really good thing that there are different kinds of people out there, because otherwise,
MJ says she's living the 9 to 5 nightmare right now. And MJ, you said you were a what?
MJ is
a spiller. Okay.
Yeah. So let's just start it back up at Hesitators and talk about the prescriptions.
Right. So this is the fix, you guys. This is what you do.
Well, it's how you can start to look at
you lean into your strengths.
What are your weaknesses, and what's the antidote to especially your weakness? How can you use your weakness, your strength how can you use your strength to overcome your weakness and come up with a system that will work for you? Taryn wants
Facebook user says
try.
There comes a time when you just can't have another baby. Yes. Did you see that comment?
Yes, I don't know if
I love it,
but I wonder if they've ever seen 19 and counting or whatever that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Taryn says, fix me. Well, you have to fix yourself, but Shaunta's going to give you
we can help you figure out
things to look at. Yeah.
How to start. Hesitators. There's, everybody has strengths and weaknesses. And also for writers, I think, like, there's no use in trying to convince you, like, that they're all equal or whatever. Like, there are some people who their archetype is going to make certain kinds of writing more easy. So teacher spillers tend to be really good bloggers, because we're lots of ideas that come at us quickly, and we have this like little edge of storytelling with the spiller edge. And so I'm a teacher spiller, and I don't have any trouble blogging. Like, it just pops out. So I can blog and I just publish it. I don't think about it again. And I happen to have an archetype that's really good for teaching, for blogging. An artist has a much harder time blogging, because they don't work their brain, like, they're so into this one idea that when I hear someone say, like, there's no way I could work fast enough to blog every day or whatever, I'm like, oh, that's an artist for sure. If you happen to be an artist who's also a hesitator, I just going to tell you that what you're feeling, like, none of this is ever going to happen, because nothing is happening, is just part of your personality. And you are definitely going to need to have systems in place, because none of this is going to come naturally to you. What comes naturally to you is to spend a whole bunch of time learning, and then fall into one idea that you would be totally happy spending a decade working on. And that is not, you may not ever be really happy blogging, for instance. Like, that might just not be your happy place. But hesitator, all of the other four, if you're a hesitator, you're going to be a hesitator and one of the other four archetypes, because hesitator just means that you are caught in a cycle of learning, and you're not actually doing the work. So we lost Meg. I think she had to step away for a second. But hesitators are perfectionists, similar to artists. They often struggle with self-confidence, and they worry that they aren't good enough. And the way they manage that worry is by learning more. So as soon as I have an MFA, I'm going to write a book. Or as soon as I have, when I have 10 blog posts written, then I'll publish one. Or, like, they just worry that they're not ready. When you say that's like a big thing that hesitators, they worry that they're not ready, so they spend a lot of time and energy getting ready. So if I ever talk to someone who spends a lot of time
not ready or not good enough,
they spend a lot of money buying classes,
right?
They join all the Facebook groups, everyone knows who they are, but when you talk to them, they're like, they haven't written anything or
done any of the
stuff,
classes,
but they're not publishing it. That's a hesitator. So their sweet spot or their strength is that they won't really know until they start writing and getting their work out into the world, because they don't know if they're a skipper, spiller, hesitator, or artist. But they are natural learners. Learning what they need to know comes very easily to them, and they will always be willing to put the time into learning, which means that they're really good often with time management. And they're really good with putting in the effort or the time. It's the going from, usually hesitators are writing, or they're thinking about it at least really hard, and they know what they want to do. It's like that hump is higher for them. That 0 to 1 is higher, like a higher hump for them. So if you're a hesitator, what I want you to try is a tiny goal, a really little goal, and to set deadlines for yourself. Things like challenges where like, I'm just going to blog like on Friday every week for 6 months and see what happens, or whatever. But to get that blog post written that you're going to write for 10 minutes a day, every single day, no matter what, even if you don't really know what you're doing, even if, like no matter what, you're going to put in your 10 minutes today, a tiny goal with a deadline of when you're actually going to publish. Because what you need most is it is like a push over that hump, so you need to give yourself a deadline, and no matter what, even if it's half written, you're going to publish that blog post, or you're going to send that book off to your editor or whatever. So since you know that deadline is coming up, you're going to do the work to lead up to getting it ready.
And sometimes, don't you think, Shaunta, that once they do that, like once they hit publish that first time, then all of a sudden it's like bam, and they're off
taking
and running.
Their foot off the brake, right? And so then they're going to like move forward, and they've done so much preparation that they've been like revving their engine back here, and so they have this energy and they go forward, and it's like, wow, where'd that come from?
I've seen hesitators that come out and they publish their first post, and then they publish the next 25 posts because they've written them all, they just never hit publish, so they've got all this content built up. So once they take their foot off the brake, it's like,
I think this is Peg Lewis.
Yes, that's what I was thinking too.
And I am a teacher spiller, pretty sure, despite earlier conversations here.
Yeah.
Well, definitely. Do you know
Peg definitely has some teachers?
I mostly only know Peg's husband's, what he's working on. I don't know much about her writing, which is interesting to me. And
Peg is writing. She has.
I know what she's writing, but what she talks about when I'm in the room, like in a call or whatever, is actually John's work more.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I know she's a scientist, and I know that she's writing romance. Romance writers often have some spiller, usually either as a primary or like their wing or their secondary. But I'm not sure. Would you call her an artist? You know her work much better than me.
I don't know. I don't know. I think I could see spiller in her. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think I have to.
That's interesting. I'm gonna have to think on that one. When we get to, I'll tell you. When we get to the artist part, I'll talk about a little bit more about why I personally think that there's at least some artist in Peg Lewis. If that is Peg, which I really think it is, because her husband is.
It is. She said it's not formula romance; it's women's fiction. Yeah, it's really like family saga almost.
Okay, skippers. Let's talk about skippers really quick. If you're a skipper, you do best when you have a contract, right? So you do best if you have a job. But like, so if you when I talk to someone who like publishes one blog post and then they're like, oh well, it didn't make any money, so it didn't work. Often that's a skipper. patience is like when I talk to someone who's like no one should ever write for free, and like who struggle to see where there might be other benefits to writing beyond monetary. And that doesn't mean that I think every writer should be out there doing all their writing for free, but a skipper significantly struggles with the idea of, say, writing for exposure or just writing for anything other than, like, they really want to get paid for their writing. That's a high priority for them. They tend to freeze up when they don't have a paying client. They have to learn to market themselves and convince publishers to hire them. And if that doesn't happen easily, this is what I was talking about, if they apply for a job and get turned down, then giving up is a real risk. And they tend to forget that you do need a following to be successful, even if you're not selling anything directly. Because skippers, maybe a lot of their work has been for someone else and for someone else's audience. They forget that the audience is there. They just weren't the ones that did the building up of it. And so when they go off and they try to start doing something that's just for them, so writing a book or self-publishing books or writing blog posts or whatever, and they don't see the amount of traffic or the income monetary return that they're used to, it can be really difficult for them. Wouldn't you say, Meg?
Yeah.
So their sweet spot, or the thing that they're really good at, is freelance writing, contract work for publishers, working for a publication, journalism, copywriting. Their audience is someone else's audience usually, and they're usually less worried about building a personal following. I'm going to go out on a limb though and say also that skippers generally are not just skippers. Usually, like, a skipper is going to be someone, like, the reason why Meg did really well with freelance writing is because she's naturally a teacher. And so but she also did well, like, skipping from topic to topic for an employer, because she has that in her personality. But, like, she wasn't doing skipper type work that was, say, ghostwriting a very lyrical book, or you know what I mean? Like, she wasn't doing.
No, I ghostwrote a book on marriage.
She was doing teacher skipper work, right? And so generally skipper would be a secondary, I would say. I mean, there probably are people who just really are never going to be very happy doing writing that is not directly tied to a publication or an assignment. But mostly, in my experience, I think
some of the, like, when I think of some of the clients that I worked for, like the serial entrepreneurs, they were like that, where they were constantly chasing the next big new thing that was going to make them money. So I think sometimes skippers tend to do that.
They're also often really good with trends.
Yeah, better at right to market
and on the pulse, right?
Yeah.
I know of at least one strong spiller blogger who I would call a skipper, who just can pivot on a dime. When the money goes away, she immediately starts writing on another subject, and it makes my head spin. I'm like, holy cow. But that is like the skipper edge, right? Is that that ability to pivot real easily and to like go on to the next thing without needing like a spacer. Like, a skipper is never going to be the person who comes to me and says, like, how do I like, they can't write a novel, like, on their novel and then like open up a blog post and start writing that. They need like the space to shift gears in their head, and that's never going to be a skipper. A skipper can just go one thing to the next really easily, and that's a strength for them. So the anecdote is that they'll do really well, again, with setting deadlines and expectations for themselves. They do best if they have an editor and a publisher and a boss, right? And so they need to be that for themselves and hold themselves to like accountable for the I don't know, for meeting those goals.
Getting it done. Yeah.
Yeah. And like they are the boss of their enterprise and they have to learn how to they would probably benefit from banking work, right? So a skipper would probably do best with having 4 or 5 like self-published books in the hopper before they go forward, or like 20 blog posts ready to go, so that they will have the work already done to stick with it. Because when they put it out and it doesn't have like an instant viral response or whatever, they are at higher risk than other types of writers of quitting. Okay, so they also will benefit from learning how to connect with and capture a personal audience, even if they're working for someone else, or even if so a skipper that would do the best would be one that could build a name for themselves in their different so Amy, I don't even know if she's still here, but she writes a lot of she writes for a lot of like celebrity news, right? And so people who see her, because she's writing for several different publishers that with the same type of content, and she uses her real name. So eventually she has built, or over the years she has built an audience for herself that will follow her no matter where she goes to work. And I see Sherry says her primary is a spiller, but my wings are equal parts teacher and hesitator. So Sherry, what I would say is that you are a hesitator, that when you pull up when you take your foot off the brake, you go into spiller teacher. Right. So that I would say you're a spiller teacher who also has a tendency to hesitate. And Rosemary says she can tell a good story, which she totally can, but she has dyslexia and writing is frustrating.
Could you dictate, Rosemary? Is that less frustrating?
She can dictate probably, but she also has built an audience that's very visual and auditory, right? Like she has built a business around telling stories with her art and a following that's dedicated to her. Whenever I'm on her YouTube, if she has anything to sell, and I'm one of these people buy it just because she says that she's selling something, and you buy it because it's going to run out and you don't even know what it is. But if Rosemary's selling it, then they want it. So she's built up this like raving fan base that supports her. And my personal opinion is that writing comes in lots of different like we say writing, and obviously that means putting words on paper. Like there's the word writing is got a technical meaning, but I would say a lot of what Rosemary does, I would consider, if being a writer was important to me, I would consider it part of my writing career.
Yeah,
because she has classes, and she's the storytelling part of what she does is really important to her business, in my opinion, as a consumer of her, or one of her raving fans. Then literally I have bought stuff from her because I come in a little bit late, and like she's selling and she's gonna sell it. I'm like, me I want it, and I literally don't know what it is, but I trust that it's going to be good because of her storytelling ability, right? So
wow.
Okay. Yeah, that's what we all want, though, and she doesn't need to have millions or thousands even of people. If you have a couple hundred people who are willing to show up for your stuff, it's enough to have a career, a business. A spiller, if you're a storyteller first. So spillers are their number one biggest strength is storytelling. They are natural storytellers. They also tend to be very intimate with their writing. Like what they're writing about is maybe something that you find intriguing, but if you find yourself reading someone and you think all the time, holy crap, I don't think I could write that. I don't think I could do that. Then you're most likely reading a spiller, and you probably are not one yourself. Spillers are, they are often willing to make themselves a little more vulnerable than other people are, and to tell stories that, like if someone talks to me about being not wanting to read their comments or not liking to read them. They're almost always a spiller. They tend to be a little bit on the controversial side sometimes, or polarizing. They are very inward focused. When they're writing for themselves, and they're letting other people see. So it's like inward this way, where teachers are very outward, and my writing, and I would say Meg's writing, tends to be less personal, but not less important to me. Just not like, I'm not out there, and I just can't even imagine doing it. I very rarely write about my family, period. And I would never write about like my ex-husband or my, like I don't do it, because it's not, I don't want to let people in that much, right? It's not, oh no, I can't. So I'm not, I have a little spiller edge, which makes it easier for me to tell a story naturally. I don't have to, but anyway, but I'm not a spiller, and that's how I know. They tend to have one idea that they're very focused on, and it's like an overarching idea. So they have lots of ideas that are focused on this one idea. So spillers often write like about mental health, or they write about, like something that's going on with them, and then they always write about that thing. Often, not
personal
always,
development or fitness.
Personal, yeah. But it's like their one, like they have like their ideas are like teacher ideas are the top of the funnel, and then artist is a very small bottom of the funnel, where there's one idea gets through, and artists are, I don't know how to describe it, but our spillers are like in the middle, right? Where one idea gets in, and then it like expands, and they get all these ideas, but they're all related to their one idea often, if that makes sense. So their kryptonite is that they often forget that they need to give their readers a way into their work. They can sometimes get so lost in the personal aspect of their story that they forget to invite the reader in. Takeaways, or like what your reader should get from what you're writing, is a challenge for spillers. I will say that for many kinds of blogging, spillers do the absolute best, because they are, it's often one of those things you just can't look away from. And so you find yourself not only reading what you just clicked on to get to them, but then going back to the beginning and reading everything, because it's like a story and you need to know the whole story. And that's how teachers often are. They're good at blogging, memoir, biographical writing, personal essays. If you're a fiction writer, you may enjoy writing books that have a very personal meaning for you. Your audience tends to be a little bit on the voyeuristic side, and they will follow you, though, if you can keep their interest. They even will be like rabid fans, because when you connect with them, they feel like they have found someone who really understands them, and that's important. So the anecdote to your tendency to forget to invite the reader in so that they can become your raving fan in the first place is to remind yourself to focus on the purpose of your writing. What will your reader gain from reading your work? Your audience will often take away a feeling of commiseration from your work, and you have to offer that to them. But you have to offer that to them. So authenticity is the key to your success if you are a spiller. I wrote a blog post just like this week about what, about authenticity, and that it's not something you can fake very easily. It's more about being, making yourself vulnerable, and spillers do that very, very well for the most part. Rosemary says that last month she had an Etsy listing and in the description was just blah blah blah, and they still bought it. That's because we know, right? Your followers know that they're going to get something good from you, and it's limited. So if we don't buy it, then we're not going to get it, and then that's like heartbreaking. Teachers, this is the one I could talk about for the rest of my life, because it's I am definitely a teacher writer. If you're a teacher, you're an educator first. You thrive on ideas and sharing them. In fact, even other people's ideas tend to excite you. You tend to be bombarded with ideas all of the time, all of the ideas. And teacher writers are very outward focused. So they definitely are writing for their audience. Without an audience, it can be very difficult to keep writing at all. See, because Meg keeps getting up and I keep losing the audience I can see. It keeps derailing me. That's how much of a teacher writer I am. Yes, ideas. Jay, who is that? See, Meg, you keep standing up and it deprives me of my audience that I can see. And then I'm like, what happened? Where is Meg?
I'm so sorry. I have a puppy that is just going ballistic here, so I have to try to.
That's okay. I was just, what a great example of why, like, of what I'm talking about.
I'm sorry.
The thing for teachers is that those ideas are, can be also the thing that we're the best at, can also be the thing that causes us the most struggle, which is ideas. We tend to be really great at starts, and we're really good with the big picture. We can see where this could go. And then getting from here to there is, so we need to build bridges from start to finish, like, and cross them. We struggle to remember to put ourselves into the story at all. So where a spiller has a tendency to put so much of their self in the story that they forget, oh yeah, I need a little bit of my reader needs to have a way in too. We have a tendency to be like, just do what I say. This is a really cool idea. Just trust me, and not remember to make it engaging or to tell the story. We expect everyone to be as excited as we are, and we have a tendency to forget that they're not actually
right. Like, all I have to do is put the information out there, and everybody will be they'll see why it's so exciting, and they don't, and that's frustrating. Yeah.
So we write for our audience, and our kryptonite is that, like I said, our ideas are our biggest struggle. We tend to start things. I already said all this. Our writing, also teachers of all the different kinds of writers have a tendency to where their writing can become dry and boring. That's hard. That's hard to admit, but it's the truth. If I'm not careful, my writing can be, it can be dry, or it can be boring. And I have to remember, because I forget that I'm a storyteller, right? And that the stories that are in my head are the things that are exciting me about the idea. It's not enough for them to be in my head. I have to actually, like, get them out on the page so that the reader also, they get excited about the idea. So
right. In fact, when I don't publish something, it's often because I think it's too boring.
Yes, me too. Do you know the old New Yorker cartoon of the man sitting at his typewriter, the tall pile of stacked papers, his wife's at the door, at the top of the
He's a writer.
Stairs, and he says, "Finish. Why would I want to finish?"
Right. That's probably an artist writer.
That's probably an artist. Yeah. Terry Demon says, yes, I tend to push all the info out in front of me and hide behind it. Terry I'm going to call Terry an artist, though. Artist.
You think?
Picture. Like Argentina.
Maybe.
That's that. Yeah, I totally think Terry is an artist. And then this happened, and this happened, and after that, this happened.
Yeah, right. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do that. Step 3, do that.
I do have an idea for how spillers can draw the reader in. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. The biggest idea, though, is just to literally make a note to yourself. We're going to talk in a few minutes about the PSST format, and maybe while I'm finishing about teachers, you can find the link to that blog post, Meg.
Oh, sure.
Okay. And I will go over that. Taryn. That wasn't Taryn, though. I don't know who that Facebook user is.
No, it's MJ. Sorry. MJ.
Okay. Okay, so a teacher's sweet spot is blogging, educational materials, nonfiction books, courses, and content writing. If you're a fiction writer, you might enjoy writing books that share the ideas that excite you. So I am a novelist, and when I write I love to write about Nevada because I'm a Nevadan. I think it's a little bit unusual to be a Nevadan. It's one of the least populated states in the country, and I think when people think about Nevada, they think about very specific things, particularly like the Las Vegas Strip. or Reno, like the kind of seedier side of Nevada. And I really love to introduce my readers to the real Nevada, right? The Nevada that people actually live in. And that is a teacher mindset for sure. And if you are a teacher, your audience tends to become a community. I sometimes think about, like, what if you were a rock star? So if you were a rock star, if you're a hesitator, you would be like in the bathroom puking. It would take a lot to get you actually on stage, right? Once you did, you're gonna kill it. But first you have to get past like being in the bathroom puking. That's a hesitator. A skipper would be able to play for many different bands. You know what I mean? Like they would be able to be like a session singer or something, and be like happy doing that. And a spiller would be like in a stadium, right? They want all of the readers, but they want that to not, like, they want them at a distance, and so they can know they're there, they can feed off their energy, but they're not looking at each individual one. They can't even see them. A teacher would be like the guy that's coming off the stage down into the audience and like learning their names or whatever as they're singing. Like they would be, a teacher wants to be like down there in the face, like in the trenches with their, so they become part of that community. So if a teacher were a rock star, they would be, I went and saw Florence and the Machine play at Lake Tahoe once, and it was so good. But she was like, it really bothered her that people were recording her on their iPads, and she just wanted them to pay attention to her and like look at, like be involved. And I was like, oh, she's a teacher. You know what I mean? Like she wanted them, it wasn't about her. It wasn't that she wanted their attention. She wanted them to put away their iPad so that they could engage in what she was doing, what she was presenting to them. That's the kind of writer rock star you would be, right? Is one that wanted to be like engaged with your audience.
Right. I would want them all singing back to me, like.
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
I always remember when I went to see, and now I can't remember what it was called. Is it just the movie about Queen called Bohemian Rhapsody? I think so. Yeah. And there's a scene at the end of that movie where, this isn't really a spoiler. I'm just going to say it. It's an older movie, right? But at the very, very end of the movie, they show like a recreation of the Farm Aid. Was it Farm? I can't remember the at Wimbledon, like the real famous Queen concert that, and there's a scene where the camera is behind the actor who played Freddie Mercury, and he's singing and the audience is responding, and he can see their faces and he can hear them. And I was like, Freddie Mercury, he was a teacher. If that's what at least he was presented as a teacher there, right? Because he was feeding off of them getting what he was doing, you know what I mean? And like, and giving it back to him. And it was like a community Live Aid. That's right. Not Farm Aid. I knew Farm Aid wasn't right. It was the AIDS, I think the AIDS. Anyway, it was Live Aid. And that, if you go watch just that scene from that movie, because I don't even know if that's how it really was, but it's a good visual representation of a teacher rock star where like there's this connection between him and this massive audience that is, where a spiller would rather it was all dark, and they would want the energy, but not like that coming at him. that would engage and like and like make a teacher probably want to explode with the energy and like, oh my God. And it would make a spiller, it would be like way too much. Okay, and then artist. Oh, the anecdote is you need systems that will help you organize your ideas and stick with them through to the end. Remember that you're a storyteller too, so make an effort to put a story into your work, and don't write public service announcements unless you're getting paid to. we have a tendency to want to write, and also if you ever meet a writer who is like really sure that they're right. A teacher writer can have a tendency to just be very confident about their ideas, and just present them as if they are completely correct no matter what. We have to remember that like other people have ideas that might be different than ours and just as good. Okay, an artist. If you're an artist, it's all about the craft. You thrive on perfecting your work and making it as special as possible. You tend to have one idea that you work on until it's done, and then the next idea comes to you. Often you have a real letdown period between projects. So if you have a tendency to finish something and then have this kind of depressive moment in between where, what if I never have another idea? Or like this, like you've lost a friend or something because that thing is done, or you find yourself not wanting to finish. If Kristen is here, she might be hearing herself in this, but where you're like almost afraid to finish working on what you're working on because you know you're going to have
what will you do next?
It's going to be emotionally difficult for you. You're likely an artist. You write for your muse, right? Artists write for their muse, and anytime anybody tells me that they couldn't get something done because their muse wasn't on board today, I think that's an artist, because I never hear that from anyone who I do not see an artist in ever. Artists also, I will say, are the writers who are the least likely to care about making money. And so as a result, the thing that drives some of the rest of us to do a bunch of work, they don't have as much. So they tend to be very perfectionistic, and that can, they're perfectionists, and that can hold them back. And they aren't willing to let anyone see what they're working on until they are satisfied or their muse is satisfied, which means that they're not building any kind of audience for that work when it is done, because they're not letting anybody in yet, right? And they often work very slowly, methodical. They are not going to move on to the next part until this part is ready and done. And the details, so the stuff that teachers struggle with, and sometimes fillers struggle with, but definitely teachers, that detail, all that middle part. Remember when I told you about, like, teachers can see the start and the end, and that middle part is like a kind of blank space that, what? I don't know. Anyone to jump over?
That's where we need the artist to come in.
Part, the detail is where the artist lives and thrives, right? Mm-hmm. So they struggle to get started, but they almost never struggle to. It might take them a really long time, but they're going to stick with it, because the detail, showing up every day and doing this little detail work, that's the artist's happy place. There's often literary fiction or essays, poetry, greeting cards, memoir, all of those things are going to be something that a artist would enjoy writing. Likely your audience tends to be like a museum goer. You're okay if they're small, as like a small number of artists, as long as they really appreciate the art of what you're doing. So you would rather have I've had this idea for this question. Like, you could ask, if it was one question you're going to ask yourself to figure out which one of these kind of artists you are, it might be like, how big of an audience do you want, right? And like, how do you want them to relate to you? And an artist likely would come up with a number that would be smaller than anybody else's. Like, someone, and if you ask them, like, would you rather have a lot of money from your writing or a few people who read it but really understand it and love it? They would much rather have the small audience. And of right. All the different kinds of writers, an artist is the one where I often find myself saying, it's really okay to have a day job that you enjoy and that doesn't suck your soul dry, and to not put any pressure at all to make money on your work, on your writing, right? You're still fully a writer. You can even still call yourself a writer who does this other work, which is what I've done my whole life. Right?
Here is so interesting in the chat, Shaunta, because LJ says, it's tough for me to blog because it takes so much time. Terry Demon says, I just want the most engaged audience, LOL. And Facebook user, which I think is Peg, says millions filled of adulation would be fine.
Yeah.
So it's like 3 different types of writers right there.
Yeah. LJ, did LJ say she's an artist?
She said it's tough for her to blog because it takes so much time.
I know, but up ahead.
LJ, I don't remember.
She says I'm definitely an artist. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an artist response.
She's learned to make her muse show up by putting a butt in chair, but she's not motivated by money. So yeah, she's definitely an artist.
And the hard part is that, like, if you're not motivated by money and society, that's what we're given as a way of judging our success. So you have the anecdote for artists is to come up with some other way of judging your success, right? It doesn't have to be money. In fact, you might find, and this is what I was talking to my dad, who I started out this call talking about my dad, but this is what I was telling him, that it's very easy for us, he and I, because we're very much the same. And it's easy for us to, we're lucky that the way society wants us to judge success is also the way that works well for us, right? Like, it's okay for me to say, I'm making this much money and so I'm successful, because the way I judge success actually is by readers, and it's easy-ish. Not easy, I'm not going to go far, but at least there's a clear line between a number of readers and a paycheck. And if you're judging success based on your own satisfaction with your work, well, there's obviously a much finer line between that and success. And often, like, for instance, in the United States, like, the highest book award you can win, one of the highest anyway, is a National Book Award. And often those books don't sell anything. Like, you might have a couple thousand sales total, but it's won the biggest prize in the world. And an artist writer would rather have the prize and write a book that only 2,000 people read, but they understand that this is a piece of art, right? And meanwhile, little old teacher me, I would rather be Stephen King. Like, I would rather have everybody reading my book. And forget the money. I just want everyone to read my book. And I would rather risk having some people call me a hack in exchange for having millions of readers. And an artist writer would really struggle with being called a hack ever by anybody at any time ever. And they would much rather have fewer readers than to risk being a hack, right? And the readers are the most important thing to a teacher. If I don't have readers, then there's no even any point at all in what I'm doing.
Right. That's how I feel. If nobody's reading it, then why bother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's see what's going on in the chat. Yeah, Lori Jo, LJ is Lori Jo, and she's definitely an artist. And I personally think that Terry is an artist teacher. I
think she definitely has some teacher in her, because she said, I want the most engaged audience. And
she wants the most engaged teacher to audience, me. And that's it. She's got a lot of teacher in her, similar to Junita. But this is where a teacher, I'm going to tell you, this is what happens with an artist. And I see it over and over. And I bet you Lori Jo's going to recognize herself here. When I talk to someone who has this deep world building and in their head, like can spend, both Terry and Junita do this, where they've got these huge, elaborate worlds going on in their heads. And when they write it, it's like it's not even coming from them. They don't, to them, I know it's coming from them, but they feel like their characters are telling the story, because they've got all of this happening back here. And that doesn't happen for me. I don't know if it happens for you, Meg.
Sometimes when I write fiction, definitely more when I write fiction than when I write, but not the world building. It's the character.
Yeah, I'm talking about that world building.
It's not the world building though. It's the characters.
Deep world building, that's just an artist's trait. And I see Lori Jo said yes. I knew she was going to recognize herself there. And I also think, Lori Jo, that like sometimes I wish that I could be more like a detailed person, or someone who could who didn't have to struggle so hard to stick with something, or
right,
to
right.
see something through, or to make something really beautiful.
If I finished every project that I started, I would probably be a zillionaire.
Me too. Also, there's not enough minutes in the day to do all of the stuff that I think of starting. I write with an in-depth immersion in an actual town where I used to live in the Pacific Northwest. Is that Peg?
That's Peg, yeah.
Yeah, my guess for Peg is that Peg is also an artist, and possibly spiller, like an artist spiller rather than an artist teacher. Because
maybe
Peg has a little bit of perfectionist in her, and she wants to have you know who else I think is possibly an artist spiller is Tana Hudson. Is she here? Are you here?
Oh, yeah, Tana Hudson.
Where there's a lot of like false starts at the beginning. Like, should I, like, oh, well, someone said I should do it this way, and so they try that, and until they like line up with what they're gonna do, and then once they do, it's like
yeah.
But until they do, it can be hard, and that to me is an artist thing. And then I would say their edge is not teacher, it's probably spiller. Although
I think maybe Peg's husband,
because she's a scientist, and
I think Peg's husband is a teacher writer. So when she talks about her husband's stuff, I think that's where the teacher part of it is.
That's where I'm getting confused, I think, because I mostly hear her talking about someone else's work, or someone like work that she's not conspiring.
She's contributing. She's editing and contributing.
Yeah, she's collaborating on.
Yeah.
But it's his work, right? And well, it's hers too. Now I feel like I'm sounding very dismissive, and I absolutely do not mean to be. But I think that's why I usually don't have much trouble judging or seeing what someone's archetype is. I think I have a little with Peg because I've heard mostly from her what her husband's main work is. But I do believe that Peg is likely an artist spiller.
Oh, I think I think she has some artists in there, definitely.
Yeah. So I wanted, there was a question. Let me go back up and see what it was. Do you have tips for how a spiller can draw a reader in? Oh, that's right. I was going to talk about PSST, which is our writing format.
I sent you that link in Facebook because I still can't put comments in here. I don't know why, but
let me get it.
They won't let me comment, you guys. So I'm not ignoring you. I just can't comment.
That's so weird. Okay, so I am going to share a link in the chat.
No, I can't. No, Fendi, no.
What is your dog's name?
His name is Fendi.
Fendi. Aw. Come here. Okay, so this is the PSST format. I'm going to share the link. It's an ugly one.
Your first Facebook Live, Fendi?
Oh,
say hi.
So the PSST format came about because someone asked me, did I have a method for writing blog posts? And I was like, well, yes, I do. And then I named it PSST because I thought it was clever. Yes, he's so cute. Oh, he's so happy.
He's missing the attention because Sydney's
she's a scientist because
Sydney's usually home and she went to the football game. So, all right. Sorry.
Most recent comment. She is such an artist. He does. You know what? Adrian says he looks like Stella.
He does.
That was my first thought.
He's got those big feet like Stella had.
And those big floppy ears. Okay. The PSST format, PSST stands for premise, story, subheads, takeaway. And all it is taking your idea and starting with writing the premise. We actually have, and let me see if there's a link to it in this blog post. Yes. So at the bottom of this blog post, there's a link that you can get
to the worksheet.
Click on it and it will let you download the worksheet. So you start with the premise, which is basically the title, but I just thought PSST like was like a really like a funny and clever title. So I went with premise, but it really just means the title. And I have a exercise for you for making sure that you're using a good title. I do think that you can benefit if you're writing blog posts from figuring out keywords. I use Ubersuggest, and I find a keyword and I build my title around that so that I can get some traffic from Google, because remember, I'm a teacher, which means I'm traffic driven. I want a lot of readers, and anyone who knows me who has to be on the receiving end of my panic if I write something and nobody reads it at first. I'm like, medium's broken. I wrote
like within 15 minutes she's messaging saying, you guys, I think medium's broken. I just put out a post and nobody has looked at it.
Why didn't anybody read my post?
Medium's
really
broken.
Panicky. I do. It's true. It's true.
And then one of us has to go read it and comment so that
I'm
she
like,
knows
can you
it's
go
working.
clap for it? Because I don't think that there's I need to see that it, you know, and that and it's ridiculous. I know even as it's happening that I'm being ridiculous, and I cannot stop myself. So I use keywords because I want to drive traffic to my posts, and it's that's like one of my high level needs as a writer, right? May or may not be for you, but it is for me. And so I use keywords, but I have an exercise. Keywords are not, that will be helpful to you. And it's super simple. All you have to do is find somebody that you can say, I wrote a blog post. And it's like, I wrote a blog post yesterday and it was called Wear a Mask Like You Wear Pants. And I would find then someone, if I wasn't sure, I would find someone, I'd say, I wrote a blog post called it's called Wear a Mask Like You Wear Pants. What do you think it's about? And if they don't come up with it's about that you should wear a mask because you know, you should wear pants, or the subtitle is consistently when you're in public. So if you cannot hear the title with the subtitle and know that my post is like why you should wear like that you should wear masks the same, like if you're wearing pants in public, you should also wear a mask in public. That if you don't get that, then I need to work on making my title more clear. So you should, if you are struggling with writing clear titles, which by the way, if you are struggling with writing clear titles, the writers that have the most tendency to struggle with clear titles are artists. Because an artist wants to write a beautiful title, and they want to write a clever title, and they want to write a title that reflects the beauty of their work that they're doing, or the humor, or the whatever of the work that they're doing, and they don't care all that much about how many people are actually going to see it. The ones that do see it, they want to think, well, isn't that a lovely title? Like, that's a great title. And teachers are the ones to care the least about that, because we care the most about getting a lot of readers. So if we have to choose between if we have God, I have to stop watching the chat, or I keep losing my train of thought. If a teacher has to choose between a title that's going to draw in lots of readers versus one that's going to reflect the beauty of our work or whatever, we're always going to choose a boring title that will draw readers. Teachers, I guess, like, the nice thing about having a tendency toward dry writing is that those boring headline like titles, they don't bother us at all. So titles should be boring, and they should be very clear. You want to think newspaper headline versus, say, a book title if you're writing a blog post. And the best exercise I know of that is to ask someone if they can tell what you're writing about from your title. The first S is story. So just jot down, like, since it's a framework, if you do this work, if you're writing on Medium, one easy thing to do is just when you have an idea, just open a draft and write your title. That's your premise. Write a note to yourself at the top. This is what my story is going to be. So, you know, on this blog post, I had saw a question that said, what kind of reader are you? And that stuck with me all day. So that would be my story, is telling, like, I would write a note to myself to start with the story about what kind of reader I am, right? That would be my note about the story. The subheads are basically a bullet pointed list for your blog post. So, going back to the what kind of if I was going to write a post about what kind of reader are you, my subheads might be what kind of readers. Oh my gosh, I messed up. I can see here I messed up this post. I used writers instead of readers. So let's say I'm writing a post that says, what kind of writer are you? Then I might have my subheads might be, what kind of writers are there? How you can use a notebook to figure out what kind of writer you are, your past experience, your current writing life, your future writing plans, and the gaps. So those might be my subheads, and that would be a bulleted list for me when I'm writing my blog post. All I'm gonna have to do is write the story and then write each subhead, right? Write what goes under each subhead. And then the takeaway would just be a little note to yourself about what you want your readers to take away, right? What you want them to get. And it's not necessarily going to be a physical thing like a worksheet or something you're going to give them that's like a physical thing, although it may be, especially if you're a teacher writer. But it's also, it might just be that you want them to come away with the idea that they're not alone in the world with their feelings, which would be a spiller writer's takeaway a lot of the time, or that there's hope out there for them, or that someone else has dealt with this and has lived with it and figured it out. Those would be spiller writer ones. An artist writer's takeaway is going to be probably a little more esoteric. It's going to be more along the lines of escape. Like the takeaway is that they have gotten some escapism from immersing in this deep world that you've built, or just that they've got to spend a few minutes with your poem, right? And the takeaway might just be the beauty of what you've written. But it's okay to write that down. And again, like I said, artists are they're much more likely to be writing subjective things like that, where the takeaway is going to depend on the taste of the reader. And that's okay, because they're happier with fewer readers than other writers tend to be. Deborah Edwards cannot figure out her archetype.
Deborah, did you take the quiz? There's a quiz. We gave the link last time. I can get that for you. Let me go see where that is. Well, I can get it. I can get it and give it to Shaunta, and she can put it in for you.
But so back to the question, I'll link to that. Back to the or you give it to me and I'll link it to them.
Yeah.
But back to the question, I've got someone mowing a lawn really close to me. Is that really loud?
No, I can't hear it at all.
Oh, okay, good. What can a reader do, or a spiller do, to invite their reader in? So you're going to focus on that takeaway part, right? And you're going to make sure that that what you hope that your reader feels at the end. That's almost certainly for most spiller writers for blog posts, that is what they are going to come away with. If they're not teaching something. Like when I wrote this blog post, my takeaway was, you're going to know how to outline a blog post. Like, your takeaway is a framework for a blog post. I'm teaching you how to do something. The takeaway is that thing, right? But if I was a spiller and I was writing, and I'm not a spiller. I mean, I am. I've got a little bit, but it's really hard for me. So even when I'm writing a topic that is, I'm trying to remember. I wrote a blog post, remember, Meg? And it was like, here's how different writers would write. Oh, it was about granny panties.
Yeah, granny panties.
I wrote a blog post about granny panties, and it was all about why I love them, where I buy them. I mean, it was such a teacher post. Like, here's how you can start wearing granny panties too, and why you should. And the takeaway was, like, here's where the granny panties are at Walmart or Target. Like literally, I was like, here's where you find them, because it's not in the regular panties aisle. It's like in the granny panty section. And I told them like where to find them. And that is the takeaway. And that is how a teacher writer writes about granny panties.
But on that call, you talked about the different ways that the archetypes,
so a spiller writer is going to write about granny panties in a totally different way, right? They're going to write about their own personal experience with underwear. You know what I'm saying? And it's going to be a very personal story, and it might have like where there's been some trauma in their life surround. I mean, I feel like you guys are going to think I'm being facetious or like making fun of somebody, but I'm not. It definitely, if a spiller writer was like, okay, I want to write about granny panties, their brain is going to go to what are my experiences with granny panties, and that's what they're going to write. And it sounds silly, but that's the truth. And if they don't have any experience, and they're going to write about their like some other experience, and their brain is just automatically going to go to trauma or to some kind of
personal experience
that they need to work through, or that they already have worked through. And so the takeaway for their reader is going to not be how to go find granny panties.
It'll be about the time they walked in on their aunt and she was wearing granny panties.
Yeah, it's going to be something like that. And it's going to more be, their takeaway there is more going to be about like how to be okay with any kind of panties that you want to wear. Nobody can tell you what kind of panties to wear, right?
And the artist writer,
be the one that's writing like, you should definitely be wearing granny panties, because teacher writers struggle with the idea that other people's ideas are like as valid as ours. And I know that that's not easy for me to admit, but it's the truth. And then as artist is going to write about like a poem or an ode to their favorite granny panties, right? And it's going to be very poetical and very lyrical, and you know, or they're going to spend like 5 years writing like an epic opus to granny panties, or you know, like something along those lines. And so the takeaway for the reader in that case will just be that they spent some time like immersed in this world of granny panties, and it was fun and lovely and whatever. And a skipper is gonna, you know, probably not write about granny panties at all.
They're probably gonna do I think a skipper would do like a review of the granny panties and tell you which ones.
If somebody hired them to. Right. Or they had an affiliate link or something, you know what I mean? But they don't
maybe
super invested in granny panties, but they could write a really cool review that like a roundup, and that would get like have affiliate links.
Right. The top 10 brands of granny panties for 2021. Yeah.
That's how a skipper would write about granny panties. And a hesitator would think about it a lot and would do all the research about granny panties, and then either take their foot off the brake and fall into their lane and write one of those other ways, or not write about it at all. Yeah.
Hopefully that helps.
I want to write something creative about granny panties now, or they would like make granny panty art.
Yeah.
Their blog post would be like showing how like their granny panty like collage or something.
or maybe like how granny panties are like mood rings.
Oh no, man. Oh my god. Yes. So a spiller can invite their reader in by making a note of how they want to do that, just reminding themselves to do it. It's not all that hard, and it's not that they can't do it or that they like struggle with it. It's that they struggle to remember to do it. So if you make a note to yourself, you're probably not going to have that much difficulty doing it. And as teacher writer will remember to invite their readers in, or to remember to tell a story, put themselves in the story. If they just make a note to themselves of what that story is going to be, actually writing the story is not that hard. Remembering that they have to write the story, that's the hard part. And an artist is going to like overcome their perfectionism by having a deadline where like they have this whole thing is going to be really good for the for the artist, but especially the subheads, right? Because they live in those details in that middle part. So if they know exactly what they're supposed to do, then they'll be easier for them to do it. So especially an artist who wants to blog because they know that it's going to help them in some other way. But it's not now, it doesn't come naturally to them to write that quickly. It's going to benefit from the subheads. And yeah. Andy Warhol is definitely an artist. I don't know if he was a writer at all, but if he was an artist writer for sure.
Deborah wants to know if granny panties are your next YouTube sale.
They are not, but I am doing a YouTube sale on Monday night. And I just picked up some books that you guys are gonna, you should come. Yes. I think when I think about like what drives the different kinds of writers, like what can drive writers? Money, engagement, what else? The arts, right? The craft of
fame.
Oh yeah.
Recognition.
So fame, what is it? Fame, fortune, or freedom, right?
Yeah.
And so like a hesitator, I'm just gonna stop talking about because they're always going to be mostly driven by whatever one of their thing. Take your foot off the brake, hesitator, so that at least you can figure out what kind of writer you are.
Right.
Let's start with a spiller. A spiller is going to mostly, I bet, be driven by
fame.
Mm-hmm. Fortune. Yeah, fame, probably. And a teacher as well. But I think a spiller is actually, I'm going to go back because I would say a spiller is likely mostly driven by fortune. You know why? Because I think a spiller who doesn't have an audience will just do the writing, but in their journal. They would keep doing the work even if they weren't.
But if they're doing the writing in their journal, they know they're not making any money. So they're still writing it. Whereas
right, if they're doing it in their, if they're publishing, like they want the money, but I think, I mean, they, like if they're publishing, the reason for publishing is so they make money, and because it's so easy for them, I won't say easy, but easier for them to be a little bit controversial or a little bit, like they're most likely to go viral than anybody else. You know, those people that are like posting stuff that's the viral stuff, it's all spiller stuff, right? Mostly the writing content of all kinds. It's like, you know, you hear people like even getting in trouble, like viral, and then it's like, whoa, like I remember reading about some family who adopted an autistic kid and then gave him back or rehomed him. And I'm like, if they just kept that to themselves, no one would have ever known. But they made a YouTube video where they talk about rehoming their adopted son. And I was like, that's a spiller. Like they didn't have the cutoff valve, like that part of their brain, like it opened wide and it, like all of the, you know, came out, and they were driven by money, though. The reason they did that is because they wanted to get paid for the content, and they were willing to do it. So I'm going to say spillers are mostly, like if they're publishing or they're publishing at all, they're probably driven by money. So they end up sharing maybe more than is healthy for them because they know it's going to bring in money. Maybe. A teacher is definitely driven by fame. And they want the readers, like that's all that truly. This was hard when I did this exercise first. Someone offered it to me and I really thought about it, and I first thought it would be freedom, and then I was like, oh no, because I can't be like, freedom to me and to the person who told me the exercise would be like doing this writing so that I could have passive income streams, and then I could just sit on the beach all day. And I was like, I'd last about 3 hours sitting on the beach, and then I in fact ask my kids, I take them to the beach. We live close enough to Lake Erie to like go to the beach on a regular basis. And do you know what I do? I'm like, you guys, I'm going to go to the flea market. I'll be right back. And I I leave them there because I cannot just sit there. I can never just sit there. I just can't do it. And so freedom is not a driving thing for me. And
but maybe it's freedom to do what you want to do.
It is, but I always will want to do something. And any space that I
have,
doesn't
mean that it's bad.
Yeah, I'm very work driven. So freedom from work is not something that drives me. Freedom from work I don't want to do for sure, but then once I found the work I want to do, I have a really hard time turning it off. Like I work all the time, and mostly just because I love it so much.
I do too.
Yeah, you too. But I am very driven by the desire for an audience or to have people read my stuff. So I'm going to say teachers in general are driven by fame. By just having people. If I had to choose between money and readers, like if someone told me like I could make a deal with the devil and he would say either you're going to be wealthy with a few readers, or you can have everybody's going to love your work, but you're always going to have a day job of some kind because you're never going to make money, I would choose the readers. I would rather have everybody loving my work and everybody engaged in my work than have a few people but make plenty of money.
Right.
That's a teacher mindset. And I would say that artists are driven by freedom. They really want the freedom to only have to ever do what they want to do. And that's why I find myself often telling a artist it's okay for you to have, like, not every writer has to have this driving desire to quit their day job.
Right.
Like if you have a day job that you love and that it doesn't suck your soul dry, there's no reason to ever try to quit that, and because when you try to become a full-time writer, you put a lot of pressure on your work to support you, and you end up having to do stuff that because you need to earn a living, like you need to make enough money this month or whatever, and so you may not want to do it. And for artists in particular, the freedom to not have to do that, to just be able to spend as much time as they want on the art of their work and to indulge their muse as much as they want, that drives them.
Mm-hmm. There's a suggestion in the chat about intimacy, a connection of the minds, or deeply connecting. I think that comes back to engagement. I don't know. Do you think there's a difference between intimacy and engagement as far as?
Well, I think it's interesting to think about engagement or intimacy with your readers. And I think teachers are the ones that want to be more like part of that community of their readers rather than having a community.
Although, what would you say, Deborah McElroy, what kind of writer is she?
Oh, she's a teacher, right? Like more of a teacher artist than an artist teacher.
I was going to say, I knew she had artist in her. And I know one of the things when I've talked to Deborah, one of the things
what matters the most
about is having the engagement. She wants people to talk back to her, and engage with her, because she wants that connection with her readers. And I just wondered if that was from the teacher standpoint or the
Adrian, who's in the chat now, are artists first and then teachers. I think Deborah is likely a teacher first and then an artist. But the artist makes her, like, I am willing to really put myself out there because I need to connect with people in order to even work at all. And Deborah is much more introverted than me.
LJ says her day job is website designer and marketing person for her teacher, writer, husband, whose book comes out tomorrow. Yay!
Ooh, put the link in the chat.
Yeah. Adrienne says she's a painter, but she could never imagine being a full-time painter and have to figure out how to sell her work.
Yes.
And Facebook user says intimacy is the antidote to loneliness and isolation, which artists often experience.
Yes, that's true. And teacher writers in particular do not do well with that, right? We don't work well in a vacuum or in a like all on our own. Teacher writers need to have someone reading their work, or else it's like it didn't even happen. And spillers are kind of in the middle, where they actually would probably do most of the work that they would do on their, like, in their diary or whatever if they had to, but they really thrive on an audience as well, on the energy of other people and the feedback and stuff. But they're way more likely to be engaging in, say, the comments on a blog post rather than saying, hey, let's get on a Zoom call and talk face to face 8 hours a day. And an artist is the most likely to be work all on their own and to never feel comfortable sharing their work with people unless they know 2 things. 1, that the work is satisfying themselves, and 2, that the reader or the person that they're sharing it with is going to understand what they're doing, so they don't willy-nilly put their work out there, you know. They just don't. Maybe all
Debras are teacher writers. That's an interesting theory. We'll have to,
maybe your mother.
Can you think of any of our Debras that are not teacher writers, Shaunta? What about Debbie Peverelli?
Debbie Walker is a spiller.
Oh yeah, that's true. She's like a spiller artist, right?
Definitely a spiller.
She might be a spiller teacher. Yeah, maybe spiller teacher.
Yeah, because I know that I've learned a lot of things from her, and she really likes to bring people along for the ride, and that's a teacher thing. I'm going to call Debbie Walker a spiller teacher. What about Katie Michelson? I think, are you here, Kate? Katie, are you here? Katie, I didn't see her. To me, as a teacher artist.
Oh, she is definitely artist first.
Yes. Oh, you think she's artist first? She's so prolific.
I think she's artist first.
Even as prolific as she is.
Yeah. She
had. Oh, but you know what she was? I don't know if she was super prolific until she found her thing, and then it was like, whoosh. Yeah, and that's an artist.
Yeah,
for sure.
She's definitely artist first, I think.
Yeah.
Because she wants everything the way she wants it, and she's willing to go slow and figure it out and do all the research until it gets to where she knows exactly what she wants to do, and then she's going to do it, and it's going to look great. She's very much an artist writer, I think.
Yeah. I think teachers and spillers both are pretty good with the beginnings. Teachers and spillers that's their happy places at beginning. Yeah. Interestingly enough,
a teacher and a spiller can just like throw a blog post out there.
Are good with beginnings, but where our happy place is actually the end, because we can see this big picture, and if we can get there, like teachers have the least difficulty just publishing. Like we finish and we're like, yes, and
that's what I was going to say. We can like write a blog post and just again. Yeah.
And so
write a blog post, put it up there.
The beginnings are a spiller's happy place, right? And the middle is the artist's happy place. So an artist has to figure out how to get started, and a teacher has to figure out how to get through to the end. And a spiller has to, like, the middle is the difficulty for the teacher, and for a spiller it's the end, right? So often a spiller will just keep writing and not
they struggle with the takeaway.
Finished. Yeah, because then they also sometimes don't ever feel finished, because
it's their story.
How can I say this? Because they're writing so personal that it isn't finished, right? Like I know when I talk to people about memoir a lot, I'm like, you have to, like, it's hard because, you know, like when you're making up a story, you make up the beginning and then you just decide where it ends and that's the end. And you don't actually have this like timeline that you know intimately that's like goes back to your ancestors and forward into your descendants. Like and so for spillers, sometimes the end can be really hard because they just keep going. And like, how do I end this thing? Because, well, other stuff happened, like, you know, and because they're writing often about very personal stuff, like their own lives, and so they struggle with how to end. And teachers are like, oops, I got this is long enough, the end. I wrote 5,000 words, it's done, the end.
Deborah says she was a technical writer for 20 plus years but can't finish a novel because it's not perfect.
That makes sense. And also there, as Peg pointed out, there's real beauty in science, right? There's in the symmetry and the creation of science.
Yeah, that whole statement from Peg is so totally an artist statement. Just that statement in itself is an artist statement.
But you can be an artist, technical writer.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just, when you were a technical writer, you had a boss, and so you can be like, just because it's not easy for you to finish something doesn't mean that you can't do it. So when you have a boss that says this is due on Friday, you just do it or you lose your job. And you don't, when you're writing your own novel, that's a lot harder.
because you're the boss.
Tell yourself, you're gonna be fired if you don't finish this. You know it's not true. So
yeah. I told Shaunta on another call that I don't scare myself.
She's not like
she can set deadlines for herself, and she just does it because that's the deadline. And I told her I don't scare myself enough to set those deadlines, because I know that I can just move the deadline because I'm the one that created it in the first place.
Carolyn can't figure out her ending.
And do I kill the antagonist? Oh.
I think Carolyn is in the club. I think she just joined the club. If I'm thinking of the right,
should she kill the antagonist or just have him go away? I think you should come on Sunday.
On Sunday to the NWAL call at 3 p.m. Eastern and talk to me in person, face to face, about your own work. And if you're not in the club, you should join for free for 2 weeks. ninjawriters.org.
She said yes, so I think she's in the club.
Come on
Sunday. And if you don't know where the links are for the calls, you can log in at ninjawriters.org with your email and password.
On this particular Sunday and last Sunday, these are my favorite 2 weeks of the whole year, because everybody gets to share their 5 key plot points.
That's because you're so you, Meg. I don't know what that was referring to.
Oh, it's cards.
Oh, I think it's because I set the deadlines and I can just move them. I think that's what she's referring to. Yeah. Yeah. Probably. Oh. Meg, good. Yes. So come on Sunday. You'll find the link if you log in and then go to the calendar and updates section. Yep. And scroll about halfway down and you'll see the calendar. It has all the links. And don't forget, the links change on the first day of every month. So the 1st of October, all the links will change again, and you'll have to go in and save them to your calendar. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise you'll get a message that says,
what are we going to talk about next week?
Good question. Maybe we should talk about something. Let's see. What should we talk about?
What would you guys have you
guys have any ideas?
Put some ideas in the chat for what you would like us to talk about next week.
Oh, because I'm so young. Oh, thank you. Is that Peg? You're so sweet, Peg. I'm not really young. I'm 52.
You're also so you, though. That fit.
Yeah, I'm so me.
I just went with it.
I'm so me.
I just went with it. I was like, you're right. Meg totally is so her.
Ideas, guys. What do you want to talk about next week?
Let me think of what we could talk about next week. That would be a good flow from this.
Well, we just did PSST.
We did PSST.
So we could talk about
CTAs. With ideas for your blog posts, because I have a worksheet for everything, you guys.
Somebody said outlining. Yeah, the outlining really is the PSST
format. But I have an exercise that's really good for figuring out what you should be blogging about and coming up with blog topics. You guys want to do that next week? Does that sound useful? Like, do you ever find yourself like, I don't know what to blog about today or this week or whatever?
Anybody?
Ideas for blog posts?
MJ says yes. Archetype. Oh, based on the archetype.
I'll think about this week, because
like the granny panty example, right? But we could pick a bunch of different topics and then talk about how
and like blogging as it relates to each archetype, maybe. Because it's really easy for me to forget that just because blogging is easy for me and something that, because it just fits. I'm a teacher spiller. I just have a little spiller. I'm really solidly a teacher and this a little bit of an edge of a spiller. And so blogging is just my happy place, man. I blog until my fingers fall off. But
that's because you have that spiller nature.
It's the spiller. The little bit of spiller makes the storytelling, and also it makes me have this little kind of edge of, if I don't write about it, it didn't really happen. And so I don't write about the controversial stuff, and I don't write a lot of real personal, like, cathartic healing.
See, I think the reason that I was good at content writing and copywriting is because I was
keep yourself out of it.
Because I was a teacher skipper,
So you have the archetype that is the most likely to not want to put yourself in it at all, right? And a spiller, like a spiller teacher, probably has the most desire to put themselves, like, they never struggle to put themselves in there. It's all about putting themselves in there. And I'm a teacher spiller the other way, but it's not super hard for me. But I also am not likely to ever post stuff. Like, when someone tells me, like, they get worried about their comments or stuff, and I'm like, I have to remind myself, oh yeah, some people write that stuff. Because I write such non-controversial stuff that if I started to get, like, hate mail or something, I'd be like, whoa, what? All I'm doing is telling people they can be writers.
I think that's Peg that said the best way to approach a story based on our types.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and, like,
that
maybe
might be
even because there are some writers, and most of them, I'm going to say mostly teachers or artists, that blogging just might not even be.
You might be better with a behind the scenes type of writing, like ghost writing, or a greeting card
blogging to build an audience, but you don't want to write how to do your art or anything real personal, so what could you share? And it might not be blogging, it might be other kinds of content creation. I was watching
greeting cards.
Greeting cards. Yeah, that would be like a money-making thing, but like, you might want to just share your process in a way that's not writing, right? That might be better for you than I have to think on that.
Peg says she loves blogging.
Peg does. Peg is an artist teacher, though. The part of her that loves blogging is the
teacher part.
Spiller, and that part of her that loves blogging, that's the spiller. So the spiller part kind of tempers the artist, and someone who is an artist hesitator is going to really struggle with blogging. Like, those poor artist hesitators are going to be like, they're going to have the hardest time blogging. I mean, like, there's no point to me not being honest about that. They're going to struggle the most.
But that's okay. I mean, it's okay to have a hard time with blogging.
Those are the ones that I want to tell them.
But they might be able to do very well on Pinterest or YouTube.
Yes. I want to just hug them and say, it's okay. You don't ever have to write a blog post. It's
right. Okay. Go do the visual stuff.
Yes.
Because
I was watching, there's a YouTube channel that I find so fascinating, and it's just a guy who does wood turning. Like, and then he makes bowls and stuff, but it's like so fascinating to watch. And he's not sharing anything of himself. I don't know where he lives or who he is or what he does for a living. He just makes these beautiful things for me to watch him make, and he builds a whole audience doing that, and then he can sell those things or whatever. So, an artist writer might be better off doing something not just visual, but like tapping into that ability to be very artistic, and how can you share that part of yourself in a way that will make people want to come along with you for that ride. And it's okay if you're not going to quit your day job and be a full-time blogger. Like, not everybody has to do that.
Right.
All right, guys, I think we're done for today. We need to try to get in the habit of ending by 4:30, because starting in October, I actually have another call, and so does Meg.
Right.
So do not get used to us being here past 5, but we love talking to you guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Bye everybody.